Hello, welcome to session 3 part 2 of the workflow interview question. Here, if you see that, you know, the question what we have, what is the T code to perform or display the event trace? You can see that I mark this as a VVI question, you know. This is not only VVI, this is VVI question, very important interview question. You must know, like if you are the workflow consultant, you are supposed to know at least answer of this question. You know, this is very important question. Why this is very important question? Because see, whenever you are going to use any transaction, for example, you know, any transaction if you are going to use, for example, purchase order creation ME21N, right? This is how we create the purchase order. If you want to send this purchase order for approval, right, then somewhere in the enhancement you will be writing some code to trigger the event, right? But just assume that already if some business object is there and that triggering the event, just what you will have to do is to identify that event of the business object, right? So basically we'll have to identify the business object plus event, or if some class is there that is also having that event associated with that, that you want to identify if already there or not, then we can use this SWELS transaction. SWELS transaction will help you to identify whether any existing, you know, if whether any existing business object or classes are there or not, which is getting triggered upon execution of a transaction. So I will quickly show you this part so that you will be having the idea. Let's go to /o uh, SWELS swells transaction. This is how you can switch off or switch on. First switch off, you will have to switch off and switch on, because if you simply by default it will show you like that it's switched on. Don't trust on that. Switch off and again switch on and click on this OK button. Then you go to the transaction, whatever transaction you want to go to. So for example, I want to go to the MM01 because I have some data over here. It will not disrupt me for creating the material. So I'm just choosing MM01 transaction, and let's suppose I have this, I don't know, give some test, give some value over here, maybe material group something I'm giving, and click on the save button. So this material got created. So Swiss transaction was already active. Now you have to see the trace. So what it will help me, that it will show me that when MM01 transaction was executed, was there any business object or its associated event which got triggered? Okay, so I will check this one, just execute this. See here, it's telling that two times I have switched off and switched on, right? So it is showing that two times, switched off and switched on. And it's telling that one business object is this one. This event got trigger. Again, the same business object. This business object is having this event. This also got trigger. Another business object is this one. And this also got trigger. And if you see that for this business object, there is no any, you know, receiver. Receiver is nothing but here workflow, you have the receiver. That means after execution of this event, there was no any workflow which got triggered. Meaning of this is that after execution of that MM01 transaction, after event trigger of this business object, created event trigger of this business object, this workflow got triggered. Meaning of this is that, so if you want to see that what kind of business object and its event and its associated workflow got trigger or not, then this transaction is very much useful. So that's why it's very important. Let's suppose your workflow, this is your workflow, just assume this is the workflow name, so this workflow, you got one ticket or incident, and the incident is telling that find out why this workflow is not getting triggered when mm01 transaction is getting executed. That means someone is creating the material, then why this workflow is not getting triggered. So first we will go and check whether this workflow is triggering after material creation or not. So you will enable the trace, and then you will see whether this workflow is getting triggered or not. So you can see that for this business object on the created event, this workflow is getting triggered. So this check is now completed. That means it's triggering, right? So that means this is not the problem. Maybe some another problem, some condition is failing, some function model check might be failing. So different checks are there. If you have to identify on a upon execution of a transaction why your workflow is not triggering, right? So those checks will be checking into the coming part of the coming question answer. But here you just understand the usefulness of this particular T code. So this is very, very useful, very, very useful T code. Remember this swells. Just type everyone over here in the chat box. Swells. Swells is for enabling the trace, and swell is for displaying the trace. Just type swells and swell fast. Now, coming to the second part of the question, what is the use of fork? Okay, what is fork? So see, fork is again very, very important step in the workflow. Why? In case if you want to execute something parallelly, then you can use the fork. So here in this scenario, I don't have fork, but let me show you the use case of fork. So see, this is how you have the fork. In fork, you can define the parallel branches, number of parallel branches, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, whatever you want, and there you can define the necessary branches. So out of these three, I have defined the necessary branches as 1. Then what will happen that it will execute that necessary branches. It means I have defined that for this particular fork, I should have the 3 branches. You can see that this is 1 branch, this is 2nd branch, this is the 3rd branch, right? And mandatory branch I have defined over there 1. So any one of these branches is going to get executed, any one, right? Then this step will be completed and the remaining 2 branches will be logically deleted. So very important concept, this fork, you must know about this fork. Fork is again very important question, where to use fork. So whenever you have to come across a situation where you have to define multiple branches, for example, it should go to the 3 approver, and if any of the approver is going to approve, then in that case this particular step should be completed, right? So they are also like, uh, but I think this is not the good use case, because we have the better option for that, right? In the user decision we can define the list of agents, and if any of the agents is going to approve, then automatically that will be completed. So this particular scenario, let's ignore for this answer. I will give you the better option over here. See here, maybe what we can have the multi-level approver, or maybe you have come across a situation where you have to define 3 parallel or 4 parallel or 2 parallel branches, and any one of the branches if you will be executing, then other will be logically deleted. So now if you come here and see, let me delete this annotation. So see here how it's going to work. Okay, so try to understand with the help of this. So branch 1 you have, right, and branch 2 you have, branch 3 you have. So at this moment, just to understand that approve, it's going for the approval process to agent 1. It's going, means parallelly it's going to the 3 approver. Okay, so if any one of the approver is going to, approve, so here let's try to see. So see here that if any of this approver got approved, right? Let's see, this got approved, the first approver. So the status will be set as completed, but the remaining 2 branches, no? These remaining 2 branches will be logically deleted. Okay, so the mandatory branch, if you have given mandatory branch as a 2, then tell me in that case any 2 branches must be completed, and the remaining, the third branch will be what? Third branch will be logically deleted. So let's suppose you have given 2 over there as a mandatory branch. So any 2, let's suppose this and this, if it is going to be completed, then this will be logically deleted. So this is what the meaning of, fork. So very important concept, and this is one of the important interview question. Another very important interview question is, what is the use of process control? So you can't assume about the workflow without having the concept of process control. So in workflow we have the different terminology like work item, right, agents, task, single step, multi-step, so many different terminology is there, right? So here, like if you see that the question which we are discussing about, what is the use of process control? So in order to understand the process control, you need to understand work items. Okay, you need to understand the main workflow, you need to understand the task, right? So let me show you directly into the system that uh, here you can see that we have this process control. What is the use of this process control in this particular example? So process control is used in case you want to control the process. Process means flow. Okay. So see here, for this particular material approval, we have defined the deadline. Okay. That means if a material is sent for approval with the agent, and if user is not approving within the given timeline, then it will miss the deadline. And when it will miss the deadline, then what it has to do, it has to mark this particular step as a complete step. So how this is possible? See here, you have trigger processing obsolete, that means it has reached the deadline. And here you have the different options, set work item to obsolete. Similarly, if you want to cancel a work item, if you want to cancel a workflow based upon some situation, if you want to simply complete the workflow without going further, if you want to activate the correlation, again this is one important concept, correlation. If you want to throw an exception, see these are the different important activity you can perform with the help of process control. So process control is very important aspect of the workflow, very important step type of the workflow. Canceling work item, cancel workflow, these are, and this set work item to obsolete, complete workflow, cancel workflow. This from 1 to this 1 2 4 7 8, this step type, and this I would say 1 2 4 7 8 very frequently used. you know. And sometimes you will be able to see this activate correlation and throw exception also get used with the help of process control. So first five is very, very important. Activity generally gets processed with the process control. So this is what you have, the process control. One process control example, like for correlation, so what is this correlation? You would like to understand what is this correlation, right? So correlation is nothing but, let's suppose if you are creating a options request and you are sending for approval, right? So when you are creating the options request, one workflow should be triggered, right? Similarly, it will send for an approval. So once the approver approves the workflow, your workflow should be completed, right? So that's the here. So how you are going to, you know, interrelate this. So one workflow you are having, workflow just got started and it's waiting for approval, right? Here, when you are creating the options request, it waits, it was sent for approval. Once it is approved, then the process from here should resume and should go further, and then it should be completed. So the interrelation between this workflow and this request should be established somewhere, and that is how we do with the help of correlation. Okay, so correlation, if someone is asking about the transaction of the correlation, this is what you have, the transaction. Not very much important from the interview point of view, but yes, if you know this one, this is good. Correlation can be achieved through the different ways as well, but this is one of the simple way how the interrelated, how the interdependent activity, you know, can be achieved together. So see, this step is waiting for this approval. So you can create one correlation, and in this process control, you can give this. So here, see, like if you want to see about this correlation, just you have to select this and see the different option. Correlation name you can give over here. Correlation instance you will have to create in the workflow container. Some steps are there that need to be followed. Here at this moment, you just understand correlation is used for the interrelated activity. Okay, and transaction to create the correlation is this one. Now, some steps are there in order to achieve the correlation. Another question, what is the use of block step type in the workflow? So in workflow, you have one step type called block that we use for handling the exception, defining the dynamic processing, whether it's the sequential or parallel, and defining the extra. So when you have the block, you can define the extra container variable over there, right? So block basically we use for handling the exception. Okay, or if you want to define some another, you know activity over there in that block, that you can do. So both kind of processing we can achieve with the help of block. Okay, so this is what you have, the block. Let me show you if I get some example, or maybe I will show you. Let's cancel this. Blocks and exceptions. So you can see that someone has created this blocks, right? So this is one block basically. Okay, this is one block. This is one another block, right? So this is what you have, the block. So if you want to create your own block, maybe let's suppose if you want to create your block, right click over here, click on this create, and in that you can define the exception. So this is your block. You can give the test and click on this. Okay, See, one block got created, right? Let me delete this one because it looks like this workflow is created by someone else and I don't want to disturb that. So just I'm deleting this. Fine. So you got some idea about this. So now this is the end of today's session.